And so I told my guys to get into the rescue ambulance, and we'll use that as a tank to give us protection while we go down into the killing zone where the shooting happened to be. And so as we get down there, we kind of staged, and then we see an officer coming at it, and he had been shot, and his face. Thank God he was the shot. He got shot with a shotgun blast, and so it was kind of a smaller pellet, almost like a bird shot. If you have a cartridge like that, maybe. And so he was very bloody, but because he got scattered, with those rounds. But so his face was full of blood. I could see him holding his chest like this. And so we got out in front of the rescue ambulance and we grab him and we pull him out of the killing field and throw him in the back of the RA. And I said, "Where's your partner? Where's your partner?" He goes, "He's safe, he's safe, he's safe, he's up here." So we backed out because we don't know where the bad guys were. But based on that, and we got him into a safe zone and got him treated. He survived.
Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
My name is Stephen John Ruda. I am 72 years old, a retired Battalion Chief of the Los Angeles City Fire Department. I retired in 2019 with 40 years, 5 months of experience and service to the city of LA.
40 years. Okay, so we are in the middle of the fires that are happening down here. We've just had really bad devastation in Los Angeles. I thought it was really pertinent to talk with a fireman in particular. But you have tons and tons of experience. So first of all, before we get into you, break down LA Fire Department for me. Tell me how many firemen you have. How does the overall organization work, and how are companies broken down, fire engines, trucks, stuff like that?
The city of Los Angeles is about 480 square miles, and we go from the harbor of Los Angeles through the south central community of Los Angeles, around the UCLA campus, the USC campus, the Coliseum, into the downtown high-rise community, to our different areas of the city that are in mountainous areas of the Hollywood Hills. So out of that 480 square miles, we have 105 fire stations to protect those particular areas of the city. They're divided into bureaus. So you have the South Bureau, the Central Bureau, and the Valley Bureau. I live in the San Fernando Valley, which is in northwest, about 20 miles north of the downtown LA. Firefighters, we have 3,500 firefighters that are on duty, on a platoon duty. So what that means is that we work a 24-hour shift, then off a shift, then back on, another 24, then off, then on. So you have 72 hours and then off for 4 days. But a lot of firefighters, specifically, were in a recall mode. We had the huge disastrous fires. Many of the firefighters had to held over for days and days. While not only did we have to have the fire protection for the Palisades, Altadena is another jurisdiction that is just northwest of the city of LA that was protected by LA County Fire Department. So you've got about 3,500 uniformed members of the Los Angeles Fire Department, and included in that are paramedics as well. So in a firehouse, you could have firefighters all firefighters must be EMT 1D, the defibrillated train that we can defibrillate. We have defibrillators on our apparatus. So 85% of our work is EMS, emergency medical services. So our firefighters are well trained, and the younger firefighters on the job, they tend to be in the most busiest spots. The busiest spots are the downtown areas, in and around the southern portions of the city of LA. The others are technical areas, like in the harbor, you have fireboats, LAX that have fire crash crews, and then the San Fernando Valley are out this way. So we're very diversified, our firefighters. We have an academy that runs as much as we have the budget to allow them to run, to bring on new people. So it's, what do they say? Our job as firefighters are monumental hours of routine scattered by sheer moments of terror. And like this last week, in last of July, it was the worst that any of us have ever seen. Being retired, many of us wish that we could have come back to the job and be auxiliary firefighters or man the stations or man apparatus, but that's something that has to be worked out with the city later on. I'm sure there's liability with workman's comp and medical issues and things like that. But the line to take our job is long, to take the exams. People want this job because of the benefits that we have, the excitement of the job and the security of the job. So the city of LA is very, very diversified, to be able to protect, if you think about 480 square miles, but that's thousands and thousands of people that live here, call it our home, and then the commuters that come into the Los Angeles area for their occupations and their careers.
Yeah.
Fill up the high rises in downtown LA into the factories and the different areas of work that we need to protect our citizens.
So you rose to the rank of battalion chief, right?
Yes.
So I think you're qualified to talk about this. So give me an idea, what makes a good fireman? What if you were hiring, what qualities would you be looking for?
To be a good firefighter, you have to be understanding that it is a process that you have to learn, the process of others before self. You cannot be selfish and be a firefighter. It doesn't fit. Our whole purpose when we go to work is, what can I do to make a difference in your life? And that's the kind of firefighter I want working for me. And I had that in the fire stations that I worked at. I had the most incredible human beings as firefighters, both men and women. And because you cannot be selfish. You can't say, well, I don't want to go on that run. Or that's too dangerous, Captain. I can't, you give me an order to go into that building. Well, believe me, my only job as a captain is to make sure that you come on safe, and then I send you home safe to your family. So how do we do that? We do that through daily work, daily training. So the work that we do is making ourselves better. We go through the academy, we take courses and classes on EMS and medical issues. We train every single day. We've got an expression that was made by a great captain by the name of Don Stuckey. He ended up being a battalion chief himself. And he made up the mantra that train as if your life depends upon it, because it does. So everybody takes that inwardly to themselves. You go, oh, we got to have another training day. We look forward to the training days, because what you taught me, at the breakfast table in the morning, where we have a drill every morning, a presentation. Someone's responsible every day to give drills, specifically if we have rookie probationary firefighters, because they have to prove to themselves and prove to the crew that they are an asset and not a liability. And when I was in the academy, I had the privilege of teaching our recruits, and I would tell that to the recruits, this job is not for everybody. You got to be able to say to yourself, am I an asset or am I a liability? And if you've labeled yourself as a liability, maybe this job is not for you, because everybody must be an asset, whether it's your first house rookie firefighter, and rookies spend almost a full year in probation before they're allowed to wear a shield on their helmet. A shield is basically an identifying mark on their helmets, usually made out of leather, or numbers on the side that they earn. And if you don't have one, everybody knows, except for the public, that you're just a probationary rookie firefighter.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so to get the shield after probation, you made it. So that's a great award.
So Steve, I've spoken to a couple different firemen at this point. One thing that I find really interesting, and what's your take on it, is I can't imagine. So you said, I think you just said 85% of your job is all kind of EMT type stuff.
Medical, yeah.
But every once in a while, you're going to have to deal with a fire. I can't imagine going into a structure that's on fire. I don't like getting hot. I can't. How did you deal with that? Or how do firemen deal with that in general?
Well, the key to it is that you're always going to make a personal, what is called a size up. And the size up is what all of us in our mind. And the size up comes when that alarm comes in. You know your district, you know the addresses, what's on fire, what is that neighborhood. If I'm going to this particular address, I know that that's commercial buildings. If I'm going to this type of area of the city or my district, I know that that's hazardous materials. So when you hear that alarm, you're listening to the size up, who's going, so you know who else is en route. So specifically as the captain, the captain needs to listen to that very much, because now he's sending his people into harm's way. So the same thing with the battalion commander. His scope of responsibility is even larger, because now he is responsible for placing companies. So the first in company gives what is called the size up. And the size up is extremely important because it's over the radio and everybody is attuned to listening to the radio. And in that, you're hearing who's on scene, what do they have, and what do they need to handle. So by that, if he has, I'm on scene at this particular address, I've got a single family dwelling with nothing showing. Well, everybody can calm down just a little bit, because we're all amped up. When we're responding to a structure fire, and the first company gets on scene, says we've got nothing showing, well, that means that there's no physical, there possibly, we're still in an emergency, but it's a lot different when you see, I'm on scene of a 2-story single family dwelling with people trapped on the 2nd floor with heavy fire showing on the 1st floor. That changes the whole dynamics of it. So being able to communicate that is extremely important, and that's the responsibility of the officer, the first arriving officer. So when he gets on scene, remember who you are, where you are, and what you need to handle. He'll call for more help because he knows that this particular address is given a particular assignment. 1 truck, 2 trucks, 3 engines, 2 rescues, because of the square footage, what you would need if that place is on fire. It's all programmed into the computer. Our dispatchers are firefighters here in Los Angeles as well. They're 911 operators. They have spent time in the field. So they know when they're taking that first call, 911, what's the address of your emergency? They are the ones, basically they have their mantra is, it all starts here. So the success of the fire starts with a good dispatcher, operator, talking to the persons, making the 911 call to get as much information from them while they're putting in the computer to dispatch us. And then they can update us as they go. So what makes you experience is that guys like to go in their youth to go to busy houses, because if you did it wrong in the morning, you probably have 3 or 4 more chances throughout a 24-hour shift to do it right the next time. Yeah. But that's a constant battle, because no two incidents are alike. Everyone is unique in its own requirements of extinguishment and service to the people. But people, they've seen in LA, they've seen these firefighters put their lives on the line, not just LA guys, but the county of Los Angeles. Firefighters that came in on mutual aid from all areas of the other counties, Orange County, Los Angeles County, Ventura County, out of state. You had hundreds of firefighters. But the bottom line of all of us is that what can we do to serve the people? What can we do to save lives and property? Because there's nothing better than to be able to come out to you, you're in the street, and we were able to confine the fire to one room. All the kids are out, your business is safe. We've got firefighters that came in to protect your records, because we do things called pre-fire planning, fire prevention, so that when you go on fire prevention, you're looking to, we're making your own fire critique. As we see a building and we do things for fire prevention, we're also looking at the pre-fire plan. So there's just so many things that are happening. Obviously, the more time you have on the job, the more experience that you have. And the more experience that you have an obligation to teach those that don't have that knowledge.
I guess my question was this, though, Steve. Comparing you and I, you roll up to a structure where, let's just say you have to go in and it's on fire.
Right.
I don't want to go in. How do you deal with it as maybe just part of your job? It's like, for me, fire, I'm going to get burned and everything else. How do firemen deal with that mentality of, I'm going to have to go in and save somebody or do something with a building on fire?
Well, rapidly, if you might found this to be too scientific, but rapidly, I'm looking at conditions. I'm looking at, and the first conditions that I see are smoke from afar. And I'm looking at the pressure of the smoke, the color of the smoke, the volume of the smoke. And that's going to give you an idea of what I've got. The intensity of the smoke is painting a picture for me as I'm arriving, as I'm getting on scene. Obviously, if it's free burning, or do I have a backdraft conditions? And backdraft is a living, dangerous animal that'll kill you. Just like in that old movie, backdraft. That's an explosive situation that will kill, residents in a home or the firefighters that are trying to come into a building. And once you introduce maybe more air and oxygen as you're opening up the building, you can cause problems. So we have another expression of the fire service. We risk a lot to save a lot. We risk a little bit to save a little bit. We risk nothing to save nothing. Now I can replace a car, or I can replace a house even, but I can't replace life. So if I'm told by a parent that their babies are still in the back of the house, I'm going to risk everything to save those children.
Yeah.
So I'm protected. I put my confidence in my equipment. My brother, sister firefighter that's next to me, we got to get in and get these kids. So, that commitment, and that's what we do. We talk about service. Why are we doing this job? What's the point of our service? Is that's what we signed up to do. And we have lost firefighters. I've lost several brothers on the job, not personal family brothers, but we call each other brothers in the fire service through fires that have caught them in a bad situation, backdraft condition, flashover conditions, and it is definitely a dangerous job.
Yeah.
But there are tall tale signs through training that I can look at to say, we got to take this from a very defensive position, or we can't make an entry. If I get told while we're out on scene and I got a frantic family member telling me that there are kids involved or inside, or a family member is involved, or still we haven't seen them, we got to do a search and rescue the best we can. And that's the commitment that we make. And our firefighters, they always say God loves fools and firefighters, and sometimes we hold both of those descriptions, but they go, how did you get down there? But there are techniques. I mean, we're not going to walk through the fire, like you see the backdraft guy running through the flames. That's the license of Hollywood. We're crawling on our bellies because that's where the fresh, cooler air is. If there was, all the heat is rising, so we can sometimes get at the very bottom, and it's almost magical where you could see the hallways underneath the smoke because everything is rising. So we can get down those hallways, and it's tough because now you'll see these firefighters come out, hopefully with a successful rescue, and they are toast, and their helmets are melted over their heads. But once I try to tell these young recruits, I said, about the asset and being a liability, or am I going to add to a death toll because I was too over anxious to get into a fire when I knew it was going to be dangerous, collapsing structures, the basement's on fire, and now we're coming in the top of it, and we're going to fall through the floorboards. For all these things, you've got to just be smart. You just work with emotions. You have to be smart, and that's what we try to teach our firefighters. But believe it or not, good civilians have rescued themselves by seeing a fire and saying, I got to do everything I can to rescue that person.
Right.
Whether it's breaking out windows or jumping in from the outside to get somebody that needs rescuing. It's a difficult decision to make, but it can be made.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get a little bit about background about yourself.
Okay.
Tell me where you grew up.
My mother and father were planted into Southern California after the war. My mother was a combat Army nurse, a lieutenant in the United States Army Nursing Corps, and my dad was with Patton's Third Army at the Battle of Bastogne as he came in with the relief. So he spent a lot of time in combat in Europe, and my mother was also in combat in Europe as well. But they never met till they came out here to Southern California. My father was from the steel mills of Pittsburgh, and my mother was from Mason City, Iowa. And so they all, after the war, they came out to California, and I think my father got off the train station in Union Station and saw beautiful palm trees at Union Station, downtown blue skies, warm conditions in the early winter of after the war, and said, I'm not going back to Pittsburgh. So they established their careers here. My father was a banker. My mother was continued as a nurse. So that was in the late 40s after the war, and I have a family of an older sister, and then I'm the middle child, and I have a younger brother, and we were raised here in Southern California. And my father was a good man, a very good father, family man. My mother was a compassionate, nurse, the neighborhood nurse. Everyone would come over, to see Mrs. Ruda to put the Band-Aids on the scraped knees or the busted arm or whatever, but very, very amicable people. And so I grew up here in a community in south of LA, and then about 1966, actually in 1966, we moved up to the San Fernando Valley because of a job movement with my father. He got transferred to a banking branch here, and that established our career up here in San Fernando Valley, which is just north of the city of Los Angeles, but in a big neighborhood of a lot of people. I think there's about 2 to 3 million people are here in the San Fernando Valley. When I was growing up as a young man, grammar school, I was befriended by our local priest in my parish, and I started to think about the Catholic priesthood even as a teenager. I was maybe 14, 15 years old, and I decided that maybe I would like to see, it was God calling me to be a Catholic priest.
What was it? What was it? Was it a calling from God, or what drew you into that?
I think being from a good Christian Catholic family, going to mass with my mom and dad. My dad was really a good practicing Catholic. My mother was very compassionate, good Catholic, a typical nurse, that nursing nature, and she passed it to my sister and to me and to my brother. My sister became a nurse. I became a firefighter. But it just was, and then the priests I had in my parish was very good men and very inspirational, and he took a special interest in me in a way that was good, and like a Father Flanagan, a Boys Town kind of a man.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like all the problems that some of the priests have had problems with, nothing like that whatsoever, but just a true interest in showing me the possibility of a vocation. So, at 14 years old, I'm going to school here. They have a minor seminary where other young men would start their training to be a Catholic priest, and that's a 12-year process. You go 4 years of the minor seminary, then 4 years of college, then 4 years of theology. That's a 12. That's called, we call those guys lifers, because they spent 12 years in that formation. So as I went through the 4 years of high school, I was very happy and content. I moved on. I graduated from high school and then went to the college seminary as a freshman, and now I'm about 19 years old. And I said, if I'm going to be a priest, I want to know what it's like to have a job. I want to know what it's like to fight for a paycheck and fight over striving in life to see the problems to overcome. Because if I'm going to help people and serve people in that capacity, I want to know the commitment of celibacy. I want to know the commitment of not having a family. And so around 20, 21 years old, I decided that, I want to get out of the seminary and get into a life that I can go and still go to school, but have a job and date and see, what is God really calling me to do. And it was a good thing, because I still was fostering my vocation, but I thought, let me now some of my classmates to this day, my best friends are the lifers, the guys that have made priesthood when we started in grammar school. My best friends are the guys I met in 9th grade, and then they've been priests for 48 years. And out of my class of 40 in high school, 19 became priests. That's pretty good odds.
Yeah.
That they stuck it out and those were the lifer guys. Because afterwards you could come into the seminary in college, or even later in college, and then theology. So when I got out, I went to college. I was a walk-on. I kind of was the original Rudy. I wanted to play football so bad. I was just like that Rudy kid on that movie. And I was like third string quarterback, second string tight end. And the coach said, I don't know what to do with you. You're like a jack of all trades and a master of nothing. And I was so frustrated like Rudy. I go, I'm a master of sitting the bench, coach. Get me in. Let me play something. But I just did it for myself, that I wanted it. And then...
what college did you go to?
I went to locally here. We have a Cal State University at Northridge.
Okay.
And I liked the journalism because I like to write. I like to be like a broadcast journalist. And so back in my mind, the seminary was still back here, but I said, let me still enjoy life as a 19-year-old in my early 20s. This was way before the fire department too. So while I was in college, I met a guy who had the same interests that I did as far as the fire service. he was telling me about being a firefighter.
Okay, so no, wait a minute. So you had, at what point did you did you have this desire to be a fireman?
College.
College.
Yeah.
Okay, was there something that happened in college that made you want to do that?
With a good friend that I met, Wally Brangham was his name. He and I became friends just through our relationship in school. And he was telling me about the fire department, and we went down together and we took the exams that you had to take, the entrance exams, and we both graduated. And then the department there is obviously during the 70s, affirmative action, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. Affirmative action was big because they had to hire different quotas. You know, Caucasians, Hispanic, African Americans, Asians, they had to meet quotas. So going through that process, I didn't make it in the first time when I got out of college. And he said, I'm going to continue to go until they tell me no. Me, I thought, you know, I think I have another feeling of service, and that would be in the military. Coming from a mother and father both in the Army, I remember going to my dad and say, Dad, you know what? I'm contemplating the fire service, but I'm not going to be able to make it in this particular class. So what are the chances of me, going to the military? It was good enough for you and for Mom. He goes, yeah, but that was different times, son. It was war, And he goes, some young men and women need the military. You're disciplined enough. You don't need it. You've matured into a pretty good young man. And I said, well, I was a little disappointed because I thought, gosh, that I was looking for him for like direction and guidance, and it was good enough for them. And he says, some men need it, but you don't need it. So I kept looking, and I looked into the military again more, and that was the Army that I looked into, and then I looked into the Marines. So I went to the recruiter, talked to the Marines, had nobody in the Marine Corps that I had known, but I just know of the esprit de corps. I understand. I didn't know if I understood what it is. I just liked that type of service, total service. And so I went back to my dad and said, I'd like to join the Marine Corps, Dad. What do you think? He goes, now that's an organization. I said, okay, there's my green light. And boom. I went and took the test for Officers Candidate School, and that was in the summer of 1975. And I was accepted, and I started my training. And then in September of 75, I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps.
How old are you?
I was 23.
23.
23, getting ready to turn 24.
Okay.
It was the greatest decision of my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because, I felt that the Corps was like the best of the best. I mean, all the military services are certainly renowned, even with my mother and father and all the stories, because I would hear a lot of stories from my father's combat experience. Not so much from my mother's, but definitely from my father. And I just felt that calling, that vocal, in Latin there's an expression called voco vocari, which means to respond to the call. And I've been responding to the calls all my life now, it seems like, as I look back. But when I went into the Corps, and all the esprit de corps that comes with it, the history, I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to earn that. And so it was a challenge. Maybe I was looking for that when I was trying to get on the varsity football team, but I didn't really capture it. But once I captured those golden bars right there, I know I deserved it because I worked hard. I worked hard for it and was successful. And so I joined the Marine Corps and spent from 1975 to 82. And then eventually went through the ranks, made first lieutenant, second lieutenant, and then captain in the Marine Corps. And that was like a foundation in which I poured my life to a great foundation from a great mother and father that gave me a good, stable educational foundation, a religious foundation, and then a military foundation that made me a man, if you will, a challenge of the crucible. In the Marine Corps, we call it the crucible, that when they give you the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, no one gives that to you. You earn it. So I love that about that. Personal accomplishment. And so I went into the Marine Corps, and as an officer, I was responsible for amphibious assault vehicles, which are kind of from the armored aspect of the Marine Corps. And that was my MOS, and I really, really enjoyed doing that. And then based on how well because every Marine is an infantry officer, everyone, no matter what you want. You want to be a pilot, you want to be an engineer, you want to be an artillery, you got to be a grunt. And that is the esprit de corps of the Corps. That every one of us as Marines were grunts from the beginning. Then after you go through school, infantry school, which was 32 weeks after your commission, then you went into your specialties. Of course, the pilots hated that 32 weeks because they said, you know, we're going to be in the O Club at 1600, and you guys are still going to be in the mud, right? So those pilots, but in those cockpits, those guys know what it's like to be on the dirt, in the mud, and the support that they're going to give us. They understood why.
Yeah.
And then we understand why the smarter guys are up in those cockpits, because they're going to bring death and destruction to the enemies that are opposing us. Fortunately for me, I never had any combat experience, but as Marines, we're always prepared for that. And my Marine Corps career was spectacular, and I loved every minute of it. I still stay in touch. I had 6 roommates. 3 were graduates of the Naval Academy, and one good guy came out. We still stay in touch. Unfortunately, we've lost 2 of those 6 of my brothers through cancer, and the other guys we stay in contact even to this day now with their families, and their children have gone into the military. So kind of gone on a tangent on that, but
That's okay. That's okay. So eventually you get out of the Marines, and then you start the fire department.
right. I got out in February of 78, and then tested again. And this time I was much more successful. And by August of 75, I had a job offer to teach school in a Catholic high school here in Panorama City called St. Genevieve's, and be a English teacher through my journalism background, and then also coach basketball. That was my.
Did you ever consider, once you got out of the military, did you ever consider going back to the priesthood?
No. Well, while I was still in the Marine Corps, I still had the mindset of what are the best things I ever had in my life. My seminary training was awesome, and my Marine Corps training. So I even had time where I sat with a chaplain, Marine chaplain, who was a Catholic priest, and still considered it, even on my way out the door. Still consider it, but I figured, but I didn't, something that made it better for me was, the need for fatherhood and for married life, but I thought the greatest things I experienced was the Marine Corps and my seminary training, and what could be better than being a Marine chaplain?
Yeah.
But God put me in a different direction and showed me the fire department, and He said I can still serve. I can still serve in other ways.
What do you think it is? Do you think it came from your parents, this service? I mean, you go to the military, you serve there. I'm going to serve. You have this desire to serve the people by becoming a fire department. Where do you think that service comes from?
Well, it comes right from my dad. I don't even have to think about it, because my dad, he came from a big family, tough, Ukrainian family, and they were all steel workers in the mills. And my dad, he had that hardcore work ethic. Especially, he was the youngest of all 7 of his brothers, so he was the youngest. And he was a boxer when and it was a tough guy. He was a kid growing up with, obviously you had to be when 7 brothers, older brothers, So he was a pretty good boxer. Probably saved himself from getting whooped by his older brothers. But my father, he was always teaching us about, think about the other guy. Think about the other guy. Constantly, in a good way. It's like, It's not about yourself.
Yeah.
Think about the other guy. And he was always good about putting that stamp, the imprimatur on my heart. Whatever I was going to do, it was never for myself. It was always for the other guy. And the Marine Corps certainly was about the other guy, because you had you work together. And the only way you're going to be successful is care for the welfare of your men and women that are underneath you. And I learned that in the Marine Corps. I mean, to be successful, you have to accomplish 2 things: care for the welfare of your men and accomplish the mission. And you can't do one without the other. And I learned that in the Marine Corps, and I brought that over from the foundation that my father poured for me about thinking about the other guy. And then I certainly brought that into the fire department, because in the Marine Corps I had 75 young Marines. I was 24 years old, and I had 75 hard-charging Marines that were 17, 18, 19 years old, plus a senior staff of senior guys. and how do I'm going to treat my senior guys that were staff sergeants and gunnery sergeants, and then I had the privates and the lance corporals, and so there was quite a balance. And I learned from my platoon sergeant how to care for the welfare of his people and my people. I remember when I first got there, I'm just a young second lieutenant, and I told him after the first week, we finished the first week and got a couple of beers and put them on my desk, and he was a Vietnam veteran, and I said, Gunny Speciale was his name. I said, meet me in the hooch at 1600 and we can talk about the platoon. And I said, this is not my platoon. I'm the platoon commander. This is not your platoon because you're the platoon sergeant. This is our platoon. And even as a 26-year-old or 24-year-old, when I first took over, I had that maturity based on what my father taught me about, you might be carrying the lieutenant's bars, but you're not that much older than these young guys who you're responsible for their lives.
Okay, I want to stay on this theme because I think it's very interesting before we start talking about, specific events in your career. You're in the Marines, you have this, you've learned from your father about how to basically deal with other people. But during your career, you end up working your way up through the ranks and you become a battalion chief. So you have people underneath you. Where do you think your leadership skills came from? Do you think it was a combination of your father, the military, and do you think leadership is innate or do you think it's learned?
I believe that leadership is sometimes as you're young growing up, you look to others in leadership and say, I like how that man or that woman is. I like that. I want to be like that. Because you're not a leader as a young man growing up. I mean, you have some leadership traits, maybe as a quarterback on a football team or simple leadership. Mm-hmm. But men's lives are in your hands. So whatever leadership I'm going to put them in harm's way as my Marines in training or my firefighters, you have to learn that. And okay. So I think you are exposed to it as a young man growing up, and then you start to mature in leadership, and then it's learned. Okay. There's they say this guy's a natural leader. True, but at some point he had to say, they always say you have to be a good follower before you can be a good leader. Yeah. I truly believe that. Okay. Because not everybody's just all of a sudden I'm the leader, but at some point you got to cross the line saying something's wrong here, and let me show you why it's wrong and how it's wrong. Let me help you get to the position where you need to be. Mm-hmm. Whether it be in sports, whether it be your own family with your younger brother, the leadership that you take. Sometimes you just got to step out of being an observer and say, I'm going to lead us. Yeah. I remember when I got to my first duty station, I see a sergeant major. And a sergeant major, that's the top enlisted rank that an enlisted man can be. And he was an old salt. He had ribbons from his scapular area here, from his shoulder blade, all the way down his chest. And I could see by the ribbons, the colors of the ribbons, he had a Navy Cross, 5 Purple Hearts, Bronze Star, Silver. So he had the whole gamut. So as I'm seeing him, because I could see him coming at me, and I'm just a young second lieutenant. I have nothing. I don't even have a good conduct ribbon. I have nothing. However, I have a gold bar on what makes me an officer of Marines. So as we're coming close to one another, he looks at me, and I look at him, and he should have saluted first, because that's the order. He just looks by me, and he walks by me, and he looks at me like this, checks me out, and goes, huh, and walks by. So I thought to myself, holy mackerel. I said, if I say nothing, he'll disrespect me even more. But if I do stop him and say something to the sergeant major, I better have it all together. So I turn around, I take a deep breath, and I turn around and I said, Sergeant Major, and he whips around. The fight is on. He goes, yes, second lieutenant. So he calls me second lieutenant, which was another shot, because he should have just said lieutenant. He called me a second lieutenant because I'm young. I got nothing. I got a brown bar. I'm right out of school. And I just finished infantry school. I finished my armored school. So he was just challenging me. So I said, Sergeant Major, I know now where I'm getting this, I have no idea, but I knew I had to say something to protect my own honor, I guess.
Yeah.
And maybe cross the line of leadership as a Marine. Because what he did to me was disrespectful. As a brother Marine, it was disrespectful. So I said, Sergeant Major, I know I'm a young Marine officer. And I know that you didn't get all those ribbons or keep all those ribbons, or I look upon your sleeve and see all those stripes, because Sergeant Major has stripes from elbow to shoulder blade. I said, or get all those stripes or keep those stripes by the disrespect you just showed my rank. Sergeant Major, because I see the honor and glory that you have brought yourself in the Corps, because I could see where he's been by his color. Korea, Vietnam, era guy, Navy Cross, second highest award under the Medal of Valor. I said, Sergeant Major, I salute you. And I turn and I walk away. My heart is pounding outside my chest. I go, wow, what did I do? You know? And all of a sudden I hear this running, and I look in my peripheral vision, it's him. And he's running back, gets up, turns in front of me, he salutes me, I salute him back, and he goes, Lieutenant, he says, it's my job as the #1 enlisted man on this base that I make sure that you lieutenants got your shit in one bag. And so far, you're looking pretty damn good. I about faded right there, you know. And that guy, later on, he became my mentor. You know, we would work out together. But where did I come up with that? I have no idea. But I always like to tell that confrontation, because that's what leadership is. And I brought that when I would go into the fire service, because you know I made captain very young. I was 5 years on the job when I was a fireman, and then went for captain, and I made it. And now you got senior guys or senior firemen that have, you know, more time on you.
Yeah.
So you have to prove to these guys that you are worth your salt, you know. So it's just, you know, just some experiences that happen in life.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
I don't know if that story helps it. But.
That story is fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your career.
Okay.
So I know, as a general rule, people don't like to brag about themselves, but you've got several awards here. You've got the Medal of Valor, you've got the Medal of Merit, you've got 3 special commendations for bravery. So let's talk about a couple stories that happened during your career. Tell me about the riots of '92 and what happened.
Well, at that particular time, I had some time. I came on in 1978, so this is, you know, the riots were 1992. So I'm a captain, I'm a senior captain. And sometimes you can be pulled from the field, from the tactical aspect of being in a fire station assignment, to do special duty assignments. So I was interviewed to take on the responsibility of being the press relations officer for the department. I thought that'd be a good fit for me, because I had my degree in journalism, and you know, I can communicate well. I know what the department, you know, my attitude was, it's never about me. You know, you get into the press relations and you're in front of the news all the time. Your face is on TV, you're quoted in the newspapers. But I would tell people, you know, it's not about me. You saw me on TV, but did you hear what I said? Do you have a better respect for the firefighters and paramedics from what you saw and what I explained than who I am? Because all the little old ladies at church, oh, I saw you on TV. Oh, no. So it's not important that you saw me. Did you hear what I said? So to be in special assignment, it was a good fit for me, and I just took to it really easy, because I knew once in leadership that I had the ability to make the fire department look good, because the members were doing the job. They just needed somebody to be out there to advocate for them. And I would be like, and the guys know that too in the fire service. They know whether you're out there for yourself, like, hey, this is my best angle. It was never like that, because I always wanted to be, what can I do to tell the story about them? You know, and so once the firemen saw that about me, they were always encouraging me, and we saw your story, and because they knew it was not about me, and so it was always about them.
Yeah.
So I worked in the public information office. So I had a great crew working for me, some great firefighters that were, you could be a firefighter in that rank and you had the same responsibility, but I was ultimately responsible. So the service in the 90s as a public information officer came to height when the riots were that Wednesday night. I was with one of my priest friends that I went to school with, and I was at his parish, and they were having a keynote speaker there that night. And I was over there in South Pasadena, and that afternoon, around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, all hell broke loose at the intersection of Florence and Normandy. And I said, I got to get back to work because it was getting out of control. So I went back to work and started maintaining a relationship with the media. This is what we were experiencing, because as the fires started breaking out, the media was coming across like, here's another fire where there are no firemen assigned. Well, that's because we were spread thin throughout the city, and more fires were breaking out than we had personnel to get to them. So that was my first introduction to the riots, and that was from a Wednesday night, all Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I finally was able to come home on a Saturday because the riots were, I think everybody in this city were just exhausted. Rioters, and it was the most unbelievable turmoil I've ever seen in my life.
Was that riot you told me a story before we began recording about the fireman getting shot. Is that happened during the riots?
Yes.
Okay, can you talk about that story?
Well, one of the issues that we had, which I felt that the media needed to know about, is the sacrifices our members were undergoing. They were being. Can you imagine being on going to a structure as big as Costco, and you're just 4 firefighters, and this thing is fire through the roof.
Yeah.
And there are people looting like crazy, coming out of the stores with all kinds of stolen material, and you still have to look out for their welfare. We had gang members that commandeered fire trucks with under weapons, putting shotguns to the firemen's heads and said, "Leave the fire trucks and get out of here," and dealing with that. So, those were some really dangerous times for our guys, and I would go interview after interview to remind the people what our firemen were willing to do and what they were doing to save lives and property, even though when they were not welcomed into some of those communities by thieves and hoodlums and murderers, and they were still willing to be there for the people that needed them the most.
Yeah.
So it was, and then that Friday night, especially as a fire commander, I was doing all the media and the television, but I wanted to be in on the action. So when they started rehousing our firefighters back into the communities, because they were working out of a command post and being dispatched, because our fire stations were being looted, and it was a wicked situation. So they divided up. They were rehousing the fire stations, and so I went to work in. I took a particular battalion. There were 6 or 8. Fire stations in a battalion. They divided this particular area into 3 battalions, specifically in South LA. And I was in Florence and Normandy neighborhood and South Central Watts neighborhoods on that Friday night as a battalion chief. I was just a captain, but I held the rank of a commander of a battalion chief, because, and I had 3 fire stations that I was responsible for. And we fought fire all that Friday night. But that just added to my experience. And then when I could go back to the media and say, I was there, I was on these fires, I was with these incidents, so it just gave me more credibility.
Yeah.
Not only for myself and my own personal self-worth, like, I just can't be talking about this, I want to be in it.
Right.
So I had that experience, which was a great experience for me, and then I came home to my family on Saturday and slept till Sunday, for 2 days.
But two stories I'd like you to hit on. What can you talk about the story about those gang members?
Right.
Yeah.
Now our firefighters were responding to one fire after another, and we were in a tough. This particular task force, which is a hook and ladder company, which had 5 firefighters on board, and then an engine behind them. There was a car that pulled in through the gutter, and the fireman that drove in the back of the hook and ladder said, "Hey, you got somebody on your right in the gutter coming up." And so everyone turned to the right. Well, then they opened fired. One of the persons in the vehicle opened fired with a weapon into the fire truck and into the cab. And everybody was ducking and getting down, but the driver of the hook and ladder, Scott Miller, took a round that severed his carotid artery, and now he was, dying, slumped over the wheel. Now all the firemen don't know that because everyone's ducking for cover, and he got hit. So once they looked over and there's Scott slumped over the wheel, they were able to take control of the apparatus where they could have crashed it. They got control of the fire truck and pulled him off, and then got into, and then they had to drive him to a hospital, the closest hospital they could get to. They couldn't even wait for.
Yeah.
They were afraid that the gunman would come back and shoot them all, and so they took him to the hospital. And luckily, through his own and the will of God, he survived, and he wasn't able to return to the field, but he wouldn't retreat. And he never had any animosity toward the guy that hit him, that shot him.
Did they catch him?
I think they did catch that
Wow.
guy. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think he's in prison now for that. But he survived. His brother was LAPD, so the Miller family were in the thrust of it all.
Yeah.
But Scott, he turned out to be a fire prevention expert, and so there was still great value for him, and he contributed a lot, even though he had that big recovery from that disastrous wound.
Steve, tell me why you and some of your guys win the Medal of Valor.
Well, I was telling you about the Chief Croker, who was back in 1911. He was a dynamic fire chief in the city of New York. And he says, the mere fact when you raise your hand and you take the oath of office, that's a Medal of Valor in its own right, because you're willing to do things that might take your own life. And so we don't join the military or to get medals or join the fire service to get rewards for our actions. We're just glad that we can be of service to the people, or to each other, to save your own brother or sister in the line of duty. But to receive to commendations is, a lot of guys do the same thing and maybe were never recognized. Mm-hmm. So not only do you receive it for yourself, but you receive it for the folks that never were recognized for it. For whatever reason, no one knew about it, or no one had investigated it. And we don't join the fire department to walk around like a Russian general with all the medals on our chests, and we just know that if we can be a difference every day, can we be of service today? What can I do to be of service today? It's a daily commitment, and I remember I had an old crusty fireman that I wanted him to do an interview, and kind of take a chance with these guys sometimes, because you just don't know what they're going to say. But I've never seen anybody answer more perfectly than him. Here he was, as he's thinking about his family, and they were asking about a particular rescue that he was on. He said, he started getting emotional. He goes, I don't get paid for what I do. I get paid for what I'm willing to do. And that's the thing about, those of us in service, whether it was your career or Rick's career or my mom and dad's career in the Army or military. We don't get paid for what we do to take the beach. We get paid for that we're willing to do it.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing with us as firemen and firefighters. We don't get paid for what, and that stayed with me for all my time. I don't get paid, to do. I don't get paid for what I do. I get paid for what I'm willing to do. So what I'm willing to do is every morning go to work, know my job, provide my firefighters with courtesy and know a drill and present the drills, or look out for their welfare. And it's that makes a good firefighter. And I think most of the guys have that in them when they join.
Yeah.
Sometimes it changes. You think as the younger guys come on a job now, maybe they don't have that same bravado, but I think they do. I see it. I see it in the young guys, because you work so hard to get it. And I have our badges. Sometimes you would, as a chief, specifically as a chief, mine would say Battalion Chief. Oh, you're a chief. Well, you're sitting in the buggy, and while I'm in the middle of the fire. Well, I've been in the fire with you, but what I'm willing to do is the same thing that you are. And so I say to the firefighters, I say, our rank is on our badge, on the top of our badge, and it's firefighter, engineer, apparatus operator, whatever your rank might be, captain, chief. and there, you worked hard to get those positions. But what is equal? The equal is underneath our position is the letters LAFD, and it's the same size as the rookie badge or the fire chief of the department's badge. It's the same size. What changes is our ranks change, and with that rank comes other responsibilities: to be a driver, or be on a ventilation team on a roof, or be a scuba diver, or whatever it might be. So it's like that old crusty guy that told me, I don't get paid for what I do; I get paid for what I'm willing to do.
But tell me about the specific of circumstances of the event about the Medal of Valor. Why did you guys get awarded that?
Well, I was in Hollywood with my crew, and I was on a hook and ladder company, but I took a run for my other captain. He was on the engine, so we responded to an assault. And as we're going there, we see LAPD. LAPD is has some type of activity, maybe where this guy got hurt, but he's now taken refuge in his apartment building. So he took refuge there, called 911, and so our paramedics and myself, with our 4 firefighters and 2 paramedics, are now administering first aid to his injury from the assault. And while we're in there, we hear gunfire outside of where we're at. And so we go up on the roof and we look over the parapet, and we see LAPD coming around the corner. We have 2 police officers with us, so he says, "We got to go." So myself and my crew, the paramedics, stayed with the patient. We hear that a police officer had been shot. So we followed the police officers that went down because they had their weapons out and they're after the shooters. And so I told my guys to get into the rescue ambulance, and we'll use that as a tank to give us protection while we go down into the killing zone where the shooting happened to be. And so as we get down there, we kind of staged, and then we see an officer coming at it, and he had been shot, and his face, thank God he was the shot. He got shot with a shotgun blast, and so it was kind of a smaller pellet, almost like a bird shot, if you have a cartridge like that maybe. And so he was very bloody, but because he got scattered, with those rounds. But so his face was full of blood. I could see him holding his chest like this, and so we got out in front of the rescue ambulance and we grab him, and we pull him out of the killing field and throw him in the back of the RA. And I said, "Where's your partner? Where's your partner?" He goes, "He's safe. He's safe. He's safe. He's up here." So we backed out because we don't know where the bad guys were, but. Based on that, and we got him into a safe zone and got him treated. He survived. Thank God it was a bird shot, if you will. Yeah. I'm not sure on the ballistics of it, but he survived. And because of those actions, the state of California State Firefighters Association, recognized the action of me and my guys going into the killing zone with the ambulance to rescue that police officer. So that was pretty interesting.
Steve, what's your relationship? There's always a healthy rivalry between the fire department and the police department. What's your experience been over the years about dealing with police departments, LAPD, LA Sheriff, stuff like that?
I always allowed my fire station to be a haven for police officers. That's our home, and I would say if you want to join us for dinner, come and join us. Take your code 7s with us. Come in for a cup of coffee. Use our restrooms. Get off your feet. Or whatever it might have been. So we always had that camaraderie, and we also had pleasantries as well. There would be little jokes we could play on one another from time to time, and but all in fun. And I always had a great relationship. The Hollywood division was right behind us at my station, and so we would throw some pranksters once in a while. The firefighters. I only heard this story. Our firemen would cast it looked like a rat on the end of a fly rod over the fence where the policemen would park their vehicles and walk in out of the parking lot into the back door of their locker room. And our guys would, wait, because the cops never knew that they were there. And then they would, as they would walk by, they would, reel in the line and just scare the crap out of these guys when they thought it was a rat. They would jump for fear. But we had great relationship with the police officers in my stations. We'd always did, because it's a different world. I mean, when, like you said, when we were talking earlier, that as a police officer in law enforcement, you're always not the most welcome person in the community, which is a shame. The good people know why you're there, but the bad people take advantage of you guys and the police officers and agents and things, that law enforcement. But we always tease each other. Well, you got in the wrong line. You should have come with us.
Yeah.
So there was always that camaraderie.
Yeah.
But we always knew that they had it always tougher than we did. And they would always, because you get police officers going into burning buildings and making rescues, and they get injured or hurt or smoke inhalation.
Yeah.
So that's about the ultimate service. So they're brothers and sisters in arms. So why not reach out to them and give them the things that they need?
Besides the riots, when crazy stuff was being targeted at you guys, I got to imagine, as a general rule, the public kind of really likes firemen, right? I mean, you guys don't really have a whole lot of incidents where people are not happy to see you.
Sometimes, that's for sure. I mean, when they're under the worst conditions of their life, for us as firefighters, this might be the fifth or eighth call after midnight, because our firefighters work a 24-hour shift. But I always would remind our guys and gals, this might be routine for you, but for this person that called 911, it isn't routine for them. So your attitude, the way you deal with the public, your compassion, your interest in their welfare has got to be paramount. Even if it's the same thing for you, especially the paramedics, because our paramedics the 911 system gets abused. My baby hasn't cried, hasn't laughed in 2 weeks. Come out and check it out. Well, we're here for life and death, ma'am. I mean, we're sorry that we can't. How do you say that to a mother of a child? We gotta go.
Right.
But sometimes people abuse the system, and that's hard on, especially on our paramedics, because they go on 20, 30 calls, and then especially our firefighters, like in Skid Row in downtown LA, Skid Row. Those are younger firefighters that like to work there. They want the experience, but they're getting 20, 30, maybe 40 emergency response in a 24-hour period, and fighting fire at the same time. So you have to watch your crews and make sure that they're okay. And I would do that as a captain, making sure our paramedics were okay.
Yeah.
So the camaraderie is, you just know how to take care. That's part of taking care of your crews.
Right. Right.
Where they're getting stressed out, or is their behavior, because they could snap. Maybe this is routine to them, but for this person that called 911, it's dramatic.
Yeah.
So treat it as such.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, what did you do to be awarded the Medal of Merit, which is the highest honor, right? For
Second
LA?
highest.
Second highest.
Yeah,
what's the highest one?
Medal of Valor.
Okay, so you got the Medal of Valor
for the shooting.
For the shooting. So the Medal of Merit, what'd you get that for?
We had a structure fire down on Santa Monica Boulevard in Highland, which is almost on the outskirts of Hollywood. And it was a building that we've been to many times before, and it was a reported structure fire. And we knew through pre-fire planning where to place our apparatus, specifically our aerial to the roof. And we had an actual fire on the 6th floor. And so another crew came in, and they spotted their aerial to the front of the building, where we never would have done it, because there's heavy electrical lines that run on Santa Monica Boulevard. So the firefighter that runs the truck threw his aerial ladder underneath those high tension wires. And those wires were high tension, about 4,500 volts of electricity, high tension. Most lines are like 750, 760, but the higher up they are, the bigger they are, the transmission lines. That's high electricity. So we were spotting. I hear on the radio that there's a fireman down on the aerial ladder to the front of the building. So I sent my crew. I gave one of my firefighters the responsibility of running the operation on the roof. I'm going to go see what's the problem out front of the building with a fireman down on the aerial. So I see 2 other firefighters that were up the aerial, and they were working to try and bring a firefighter. Apparently he came in contact with 4,500 volts electricity because as he was climbing through the area, underneath the aerial, the lines were about 18 inches above his head. So as he got his breathing apparatus captured the electrical lines. So he grounded himself on the aerial and then pushed off the wire. And that was charged, those are charged lines. So he was hit with what we believe were 4,500 volts of electricity. So the engineers were responsible to provide water, get the hose lines as the fires were, guys were getting to fight fire. They saw him go down, and because they saw a helmet fall to the ground, that got their attention because he's up 70 feet on an aerial ladder, and he was now electrocuted, and now he fell. And he fell, and the way he fell is that his legs split between his thighs, his two legs, by a rung. So one leg was on a higher end. He had a rung, which is the step for the ladder, and then his other leg was on the other side. So he was now hanging. He wasn't going to fall off, but we had to get him up and out. But we had to lift half his body up, but we couldn't get the power to lift him, because as we're lifting up, I'm telling the firefighters, don't go higher than my hands. Obviously, we got electrocuted, and we don't know if the energy is on or off. I think that it was off because it was de-energized by the initial electrocution, so it must have been off, because we were also too close. So we got to make this rescue, because now he's pulseless and non-breathing. So I quickly thought, and then on my way up the ladder, I told another company to come with a defibrillator, because I'm figuring he's got electrocuted. So another company was coming up, and so I went up the aerial, and now we're struggling to get him up. Can't get him. I mean, we can't be wasting a lot of time doing this, and we can't get up, lift him up, because we're going to lift him up in the wires. So it struck me, go down a couple rungs, and I said, break his body from his trunk up, break him down to me as I take him out, and then you grab his legs and pull him up. So now instead of his whole body pulling up, now I'm bending him over, and they're pulling out his legs.
Yeah. So
he comes out like this. And so I didn't recognize who it was. It was, he had been electrocuted, and I saw his face was foaming. And so now we're carrying him down the ladder, and then we passed him off to the guys that are at the bottom of the ladder, and they ripped his uniform off and defibrillated him right there. And that defibrillation, I think they had two defibrillations, and we had a pulse. And so I went to visit him, at the burn center. We have a beautiful burn center, the Grossman Burn Center, that helps our firefighters when we get burned. And I went to visit him that was on a Friday night, was the electrocution, and Sunday he was alive and well and communicating with his family. He had just had some surface burns from touching the electricity and palmed up on him.
Wow.
So he retired after that. He probably thought that was his warning. But the guys that were up there first, the three of us received the second highest award for bravery, which is the Medal of Merit.
Okay, so you've been awarded the Medal of Valor. You've been awarded the Medal of Merit. You've got 3 special commendations for bravery. What do you have to do? You were awarded the Firefighter of the Year for 2005. What do you have to do to get that?
Well, that is a combination. Mostly, it's kind of like most of the guys that get it, they're you don't feel like you're in their league, and then you get called that you got it. You're like, no, there's no way. There are others more rewarding than I. So somebody nominates you, and then they go before the board, unbeknownst to you, that you've been nominated, and they present your package to a board of other firefighters, and they determine whether or not you should be the recipient of the Firefighter of the Year. And it's based on your personality, your work ethic, where you worked, fires that you've been to, recommendations by others, and I can tell you it's an honor to be with them, because they go back to the 60s.
Wow.
Every year they pick, and every time they pick somebody, and luckily I'm included in that, it's like the best guys. Guys that really deserve it, versus like woke, or well, you're this or you're that, and we need to No, you are a deservant. And when most guys get up there and what do they say? I'm not worthy to receive this, including me. But, you know, it just was a great event. I brought my grammar school teacher, a nun, and shared with her, you know, that honor because, like, you don't get there by yourself.
Yeah.
You get that by partners like you or other guys you've worked with. And so to receive the Firefighter of the Year, we tease each other because, you know, for the rest of your life, you'll get a one free lunch in the spring of the year because they have the luncheon for the Firefighter of the Year to welcome the new recipient. And there have been just, if you look at the recipients, they're just always the top. I'm not saying me, the top notch guy, but the others, I look at them as like, you couldn't have picked a better person.
Right.
And the cream just all, and there are some great guys that get nominated and gals that get nominated. But the guy that always wins is like the best of the best. So to be included in that crowd, you know, it was a great honor for me and my family. You know, they all got to come, and my priest buddies came. You know, and it was, you know, it was just a great honor to have that. Yeah.
Couple last things. Can you tell a story about H.W. Bush?
Oh, okay.
President Bush.
Okay. So during the riots, when we talked a little bit about our firefighter that got shot during the riots, I was a public information officer, and I heard that President Bush, Senior Bush, was coming to L.A. So I thought, wouldn't it be great for morale if the president's coming to L.A. to come and visit our guy that got wounded, he got shot. And so I had a number for the White House, and I called and I said, you know, we had a firefighter that was shot and he's in the hospital at Cedars-Sinai. What would be the chances of the president coming to see Scott Miller? And they said, well, we'll get back to you. And then I thought, well, that's the end of that, you know, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. And about 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from an individual. He says, he's from Presidential Advance. We like that idea, but we want to know, could the firefighters have breakfast with the president? And I'm thinking, well, I think we're in. He says, but we're in the planning stages, so don't tell anybody. Because, I mean, this is right after the riots. I mean, the Secret Service got security. They want to, you know, some of them want to take them right down to Florence and Normandy, the flashpoint. Others, so they wanted me to take them to the fire stations near Florence and Normandy. And I took them to another place because I could read the Secret Service body language when I took them there. They go, this is Fort Apache, you know. It's like they don't want to take them there. So I took them to another station where the Pope came, Pope John Paul II came, and the Secret Service was responsible for his welfare. So they liked that station, so I took them there, and they go, we like this station better. And it was a very busy station, so they said, don't tell anybody anything. I couldn't even tell the fire chief that they were planning to do this until I got the okay. So I can't remember the face of the fire chief when I went to the fire chief and said, Chief, I was wondering if it's possible for President Bush to come and have breakfast with a fireman. He goes, what? I go, yeah, the president wants to come and visit Scott Miller. So we put it all together, and it was a great morale builder for the firefighters, great morale builder for our guy that was in the hospital, even though he really couldn't speak because of his injury and his wounds. But it was a great thing that the President Bush did when he came and just showed the compassion just for not only our one guy, but all of us that were in the fight.
Yeah.
It was a great effort. And of course, the firefighters have their pictures with the president, and it was just a great event.
Yeah.
But as a PR guy, is it my job? My job is to make us look good for our own people.
Right.
And I saw an opportunity to make our guys feel good, and we won all the way around. So it was perfect.
So Steve, I thought one thing was interesting when you had sent me kind of your bio. On there, you had a couple things, and I just got to imagine this is just a California Hollywood thing, right? So you were a technical advisor to Collateral Damage, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. You were a technical advisor and voiceover scriptwriter for Ladder 49 with Joaquin Phoenix and John Travolta, and then you were an extra in Twin Towers and Nicolas Cage. How were those experiences?
They were out of the box, that's for sure, especially being, Collateral Damage. That movie's an old movie now, I think 25 years since that was made. But Schwarzenegger plays, in the beginning of the movie, to build his bravado, because the movie is that he's a firefighter, but then his wife and son get killed in a collateral damage terrorist attack on a political individual. So then he goes to South America to try to find the insurgents. So through his firefighting, bravado, he goes like we will. Yeah, let's just. I'm gonna take VC, Captain. So can you put me off VC? I'm going to Colombia, and find the bad guys. But that's Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I had a responsibility to make sure that when I was a technical advisor, to make sure they did it correct. If you're going to portray me, or portray me, you have to do it right. Of course, you give them some Hollywood licensing and whatnot, and they wanted to do a scene with Schwarzenegger where his bravado was we were going to do a diagonal rappel across Hollywood Boulevard to a building roof, invert a rappel, and then it rappels down to the roof. I mean, it was all total Hollywood, And then they kind of came to the realization that it just was too much.
Yeah.
And so they just changed it to a regular structural firefighting where, Schwarzenegger is his captain, and he jumps across a gaping hole to rescue an old woman, like all firemen do on TV. But I had an obligation to make sure that they did it correctly, and so, Mr. Schwarzenegger, with all due respects, this is the way we would do it. I would give them some leverage, but if you're going to portray me and you're asking me to be a technical advisor, and people are going, oh my God, you're going to tell Schwarzenegger you can't do that? Oh yeah, that's what you asked me to do.
Yeah.
So anyway,
did you get to meet these guys? Did you get to meet Schwarzenegger and
Oh,
Travolta
sure.
and Nicolas Cage?
Yeah. Well, I didn't Nicolas Cage and that was another thing, but Schwarzenegger definitely, because I taught him how to be a firefighter.
How was he?
He was very amicable.
Okay.
Very amicable, and so he goes, Captain Ruda, I want to give you a part. And I said, no, you don't need to give me a part. I want to. So my part was, at the end of the movie, we were in a fire station environment, and my line was, look who's coming. And it was him coming back from all his bravado of going to Colombia and everything. But like all good movie stars, it was on the cutting room floor. They never used it. But it was fun while I did
Yeah.
it. And it gave us a respect, because he respected me because I was trying to make him as authentic as possible.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people, maybe if you've been in that business, but they don't want to say anything for fear they get fired.
Right.
I'm not going to tell a big star how to
Right.
do it. No, if you're going to play an LA fireman, this is the way we do it.
So you didn't meet Nicolas Cage. Did you meet Joaquin Phoenix or Travolta?
I never met those, because what we were doing, we're doing voiceovers. So like when you see a movie, we had voice actors to do background conversations. So you saw Joaquin Phoenix and Travolta doing a scene, but other firefighters would be walking by them, and I'd have to give them right lines for them that would sound appropriate for what they were doing.
Got it.
And they would write that in, and then these voice actors would walk by a mic. The film would run, and as the firemen would walk by, they would dub in the comments that I wrote for them to say. So that was on Ladder 49 with Joaquin Phoenix and.
Okay, so I want your expertise. What is the best, most realistic movie portraying a firefighter?
Most movies take a lot of licensing. They take a lot of liberties.
Yeah.
But that's Hollywood.
Yeah.
But I feel I have an obligation that we don't treat people that way. We don't speak that way. And then sometimes they take liberties. I think that's the word I was looking for. And so, on some of those movies we did with Nicolas Cage, it was a 9/11 of the Port Authority. They were both Port Authority police officers that went in and was able to. I think they were also captured inside the structure or the World Trade Center, and had to be dug out by firefighters.
Yeah.
So as I was just played a New York guy that was just background. Sometimes.
But do you have a favorite one? I mean, do you think like Backdraft is the best one that portrays you guys the best? What movie do you think does the best job?
Well, I think they try very hard to do it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on TV. I mean, Chicago Fire, 9/11. I think the best thing I ever saw was the real TV show called 9/11 that would have actual footage.
Okay.
Because it was real footage. Then they would have keynote speakers come and speak about the incident. We always kind of, chagrin a little bit or just shuddered because, sometimes the Hollywood is Hollywood,
Yeah.
and they still show some things that are maybe inappropriate, or relationships might be inappropriate. Maybe it shows us less compassionate and having inner firehouse relationship with male, female. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen per se, but I don't particularly care for that because that's not how we are.
Yeah.
So the TV shows, I mean, people think, well, I saw you on TV, and they go, well, just take off 10%, and and that's the reality. But you same guys when those in law enforcement, some are factual, and gun battles are few and far between, or they just take some licenses because that sells tickets.
Yeah.
The action.
Yeah.
The action.
Last question for you, Steve. Did being a firefighter, how did that affect your family?
My firefighting family, 1/3 of our lives as firefighters are spent away from here.
Right.
Away from our family. So we try to incorporate our family life into the fire station life. Kids, they still have great memories of holidays, Christmas, birthdays, celebrations. Come to the firehouse and have for Christmas dinner or for Easter meal or Thanksgiving. Takes tolls on guys. Specifically, they work a lot of overtime, to make things, meet the financial responsibilities that they have, and some guys put a lot of time in for that. They always say I might have been a chief at work, but I'm not the chief at home. So I think that might be for all of us in the service.
Yeah.
Is that they're the chief here while you're gone, and they got to make decisions, and they might not give you a phone call because they can't get a hold of you and making decisions, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I was a chief at work, but I always tease. I tell my wife and friends, I'm not the chief at home, and it all works out because it's a team effort too. And my wife and I have been married 31 years, going on 32 this year, and it's been good. But my children like it, because we've got the fire service family, but then since Christmas we just had it one Christmas, the guys working in the neighborhood here, I'd invite them over for Christmas Eve, and one year they come in and each of them are carrying a poinsettia. And I go, how nice that they stopped at the store to come over and brought us poinsettias for our front porch. And then I'm thinking for a minute, I go out to the front porch, they had taken all my poinsettias off the front porch and brought them in. They have great sense of humor. So,
Yeah.
But that's part of it because, they're away from their families. And so if I can share, and I live close, and they can share in the festivities I have on my day off, and guys still talk about it. Matter of fact, the house across the street, one of my biggest fires I had as a captain, was right across the street from the house at 10,000. I live at 10,000 block of Wilbur. And the fire's like at 10,007. So I'm thinking that the address came in at 10,007 across the street from. So sometimes we get addresses that are fires across the street from, because I see that, and I say, well, I don't know their address, but I can't see it. I don't know what it is, but it's across the street from my house, and I'm at 10,000. And we're coming across, from the station, and I could just see a monstrous black loom up. Remember I told you about making the size up?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, my God, that looks either my house or across the street, and hope to God that's across the street. And it was. We turned the corner, and I'm looking out the windshield like that down the corner to see what side of the street, or this corner right down here.
Yeah.
And it was on that side of the street. So, but we saved the house.
Well.
So I couldn't imagine driving home if I didn't save the house. Every day somebody would be egging me, throwing eggs across the street. You didn't save my house. That'd been embarrassing. But it worked out really good. So, so I hope my answers and questions were not too long.
Yeah,
all right?
It was great, Steve. Really appreciate the interview. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.